Well, welcome back everyone to our online program, and we've been talking about the modern prohibition. Not like the old prohibition in Canada, 1918, the United States, 1920, where it was a moral issue, basically. The modern prohibition is more centered in health, and let's do everything we can to make sure people are physically healthy. And even if there's the slightest risk to that, then we should just prohibit it. And we hear this now with this publication came out of the British Medical Journal, where the huge scientific study which argued that no amount of alcohol was safe, that there was a risk of developing diabetes, heart disease, cancer if you were to drink. Neglecting, of course, that the statistics were extremely, extremely small. I think one fellow worked it out and came up with for 100,000 people, the incidence that a drinker would run into problems increased. We would basically expect maybe 63 people to run into problems for every 100,000 people. So a very, very small percentage of people. But that's not the way it was presented. It was presented as no amount of alcohol was safe. It's this idea of, it was everything focused on the drinking, right? And this is one of the things about prohibition, is that any sort of other perspective is automatically dismissed, right? If you were to run into problems with drinking, you might think that, well, maybe there's some underlying issues going on. Maybe there's a vulnerability to this excessive drinking. Maybe there's some kind of serious mental disorder going on. Maybe something is promoting the drinking, but when you look at prohibition, it's focused on the act of drinking itself. And if the act of drinking creates any sort of problem, then just put a lid on it. And it's such an incredibly narrow view, right? Because it looks at us human beings as, well, if it's physically bad, we can't do it. So, maybe I like the taste of wine. Maybe I'm a connoisseur of whiskey. Well, none of that enters into the prohibitionist perspective, because it's not about, we got to be very scientific about this and recognize all the risk factors, and that's the decision, right? And it's almost as if we have an approach where we don't want any risk whatsoever. It's almost this like we want guarantees of safety, right? And so that's where we put our focus on, instead of what we now know to be, for example, with alcohol, of perceived benefits. And entire nations, entire cultures actually weave alcohol drinking through how they make sense of their lives. So the Italians believe that drinking is part of what makes life worth living, right? Belgians drink a lot. We've mentioned before, whiskey drinkers even write books on the joys of single malt versus other malt scotches, and they can list the years when they were distilled. And it's almost like I'm sure, a hobby, but something that they find rewarding, that makes them feel a little more alive, right? Prohibition deals with none of that. It's just strictly, does the person have a drink or don't? And here's our scientific research. We've proven that, yes, even though 63 people per 100,000 may develop, cancer, diabetes, heart disease as a result of having, one more drink a week than a teetotaler, that's enough. That's the defining feature, right? So this remarkably narrow view of it. Then that's why in many ways it's so surprising to hear in the 21st century this sort of modern version of prohibition that seems to be coming to the fore. That we're all recommended to live with healthy mindedness and good order, and that's really the defining feature. Hey, Ray, it's one of those interesting things to think about. And that's it for our program, and we'll be back next time with a new topic on our addiction and recovery.